everybody. Thank you for joining in. If you could like and smash that like button, I really appreciate it. I'm going to dive into the Zondervan handbook again, and specifically I'm talking about Joseph, and this particular excerpt is by David Barton. And I just want to highlight some of the things that he brings out about Joseph, who ends up being, first of all, he's Jesse's favorite son, and he is especially loved by Jesse, and Jesse gives him the coat of many colors. And Joseph is a dreamer. He has visions, and because Joseph is just kind of like, maybe you could say he has no filter, he gets excited about the dreams or the visions that come to him, and he just wants to share it with his brothers, and he wants to just say, hey, I have this this destiny, and this is what's being revealed to me. But his brothers didn't like him very much, and they were very jealous of him. And, through this jealousy, his own brothers put Joseph into slavery. And so he's taken away, and he's used as a slave. And eventually, Potiphar, an Egyptian official, he's sold to Potiphar, and Potiphar has a really large estate. And Joseph, at some point, is in charge of all of Potiphar's affairs because he helps with an interpretation of the dreams. But at some point, he's put to a test, and the test is Potiphar's wife is attracted to Joseph, and she lies that Joseph is trying to rape her, and so then Joseph is put into prison. And the point is, Joseph didn't do the deed that he was accused of, but he's put in prison. And, when he's in prison, there's also other people that are put in the jail cell. One of them is, I think, a baker and something else. And he ends up interpreting their dreams. And by interpreting their dreams, then they are released from prison and the scales are balanced. And, it's like this opportunity that from that he's then asked to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. And because Joseph is able to interpret Pharaoh's dreams about the 7 years of plenty and then the 7 years of famine, then Joseph himself is put as the second-hand man to Pharaoh, and he is like the right-hand man that is going over Pharaoh's whole, estate, and he is ruling and reigning on behalf of Pharaoh. And as time goes on, eventually there's the period of famine, and Joseph's own family, meaning his brothers that put him into this horrible situation of being a slave and then a prisoner, his brothers are now coming to Egypt to get nourishment, to get, food. And, Joseph knows what they did to him, and he basically asked them to leave behind the youngest, Benjamin, who is from the same mother. I think it was Rebecca. I think Jacob, and let's see. I think that's the right woman. Anyway, if I'm getting it wrong, I apologize. But the idea is that Joseph asked for his younger brother to be left behind, and then the other brothers go back, and then Joseph finally reveals himself to all of his brothers, and he said, you did these things to me to do harm to me, but in fact, it was part of God's plan. And I love you, brothers, and, I may be the dreamer of dreams, and you may not like what I told you back when we were children, but the reality is I am now the ruler, and I am now going to save our family, and, now go get my father and bring him here, and you can all live in this land, and what have you. So the point is that there's this forgiveness that Joseph is able to put into action, which is truly remarkable. And when many of us have things that are done hurtfully to us, our initial, gut reaction is like, oh, screw you. Like, you're not going to do that to me, or I'll show you, like if you do something horrible to me, I'm going to act out and I'm going to block you, or I'm going to do this and that. But what's interesting is that again, this is from the interpretation of David Barton. The heart of the story is that the Joseph story differs from those that precede it. It is a continuous narrative in a way that the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are not. In the earlier stories, God reveals himself to each of the patriarchs, but Joseph is only the dreamer of dreams. God is always the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Despite his stature, Joseph is never added to that list. And that was surprising to me, that Joseph is not. But yet, here we go on. But with Joseph, a new understanding of God's dealing with people is introduced, one that grows in significance as the Bible story develops. Joseph is vulnerable and rejected, yet he trusts God, and through him, God succeeds in saving not only his own people, but other nations too. Forgiveness is the turning point in Joseph's story. These are the themes we meet again with Job, and with the later Isaiah, and supremely with Yeshua himself. So this idea that Joseph, who was put into slavery, put into prison, all on behalf of his brothers doing him evil and mischief, and then later, because of those obstacles, because of those situations that he was in, being a slave, being a prisoner, put him in the right place at the right time for God to use him to interpret the dreams of other rulers, and then of Pharaoh, and then for Joseph to become the ruler with Pharaoh, the second, right-hand man to Pharaoh, and then for Joseph to, interpret the Pharaoh's dreams of the feast and famine, and to be able to provide, to make necessary provisions, to be able to not only protect Joseph's immediate family when they come asking for food, but also for the nations, that people came to Joseph, they came to Egypt to request food. And because Joseph saved the plenty, there was enough. And so this idea of forgiveness, that Joseph is able to look at his brothers and say, I forgive you, brother. Like, it really does give understanding, and it creates the prototype for what is to come when Yeshua comes, and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Meaning, they're crucifying him, they're mocking him, they're selling his clothes through lots, they're spitting at him, they're calling him names, they're believing in all the wrong things. And meanwhile, there's Jesus, Yeshua, on the cross, bearing all of our sins as our true redemption. And he comes to us humbly, silent, taking all of that, rejection, and being the vulnerable one. And so Joseph is like a prototype for the Jesus, Yeshua, that comes, and Yeshua takes all of our crap, all of our sin, and he redeems us. So, again, a great story about how blessings come, and sometimes in unusual ways. I look at my own situation, and I think of how, like I'm with my fiance, and I'm thinking I'm going to have this certain life, and I'm thinking that things are laid out in a certain way, and I'm striving with my actions to be able to line things up, to purchase these items, to furnish this home, to do all these things that move me towards, that idea of owning my own home, and having a husband, and being able to care for my husband and what his needs are, etc. And then it's like that whole plan gets mixed up, and my fiance, goes an evil direction, and dies from drug addiction. And like I'm left with all of these unfinished things, unfinished goals, unfinished projects, financial disaster. And through all that, I'm like, why? Why me? Like, why did that have to happen? And yet, it's through those trying times that God was revealing to me, what really is the character of a man, and what kind of man is really the right man for me to be married to. And through that whole portion, God was revealing to me that I need to be married to him first, that he's my husband, and that my divine relationship, in the Word, through the Word, is my primary focus. And then the secondary of taking other understanding and literature and books, etc., to have a deeper understanding of the Word is my calling. And that is what I'm being asked to do. And yet, the man that I thought I was going to marry, who had this facade, who had this image, who had this, pleasing, charismatic way of pulling me in, that, what was displayed was not really the truth, because underneath of all that fakeness was really someone who was narcissistic, someone who was lying, someone who really was not who they said they were. And that lesson that I had to learn through that whole experience really shows me, kind of like the story of Hosea, that, there's a time period where, there's a repeat. The Bible eras repeat, and that you think that you're going to be matched with someone who is really for you, but in reality they're not for you, they're against you. And that God is actually rescuing you from disaster, and that you don't realize this in the midst of it, you realize it afterwards. And then when I think of all the hardship, the financial challenges that I went through, and how much I trusted in what somebody said versus, now that I saw the whole picture of all of their behavior, it was showing me that, like, you have to require proof. You need to verify. And that if somebody is, doing things to ruin your reputation, and they're doing things, underhandedly, that person is not truly with the Lord, because they're being, they're being a con man, they're being manipulative. And that's, I know there's a place for all of this, because again, if you look at Jacob, who then becomes Israel, Jacob was a con man. He did things not well, but he was also influenced by his mother, who definitely got him to take away his elder brother's inheritance. So it's like there's all these, I'm going to say, patterns that flow through the Bible, that yet God still loves Jacob. He renames him Israel, and he gives them opportunities for still being obedient, even though he was deceptive. And I guess what I'm saying with that is that there's blessings that I received as a result of that time period of being with my fiance. And even though it didn't turn out the way that I had hoped that it would turn out, that there were lessons, hard lessons, difficult, suffering lessons that I had to go through, that took me through a period of disappointment, like Joseph. But yet, even in the disappointment, even when Joseph was a slave doing things that he didn't want to do, and even when he was a prisoner doing things that he didn't want to do, like, he was still listening to the call of God. He was still doing what he could do in his capacity. And I think of my own life, that there have been many obstacles, and yet I'm listening for that small, still voice to follow, and, to be led in the way that I may not always understand, but to be obedient nonetheless. So, Joseph is a great example of trusting in the Lord, having hope in the Lord, and that even though you don't understand it, that you're going to be obedient to the Lord's calling, even though it doesn't make sense, even though there's hardship involved. So I think Joseph is a great example for that, not just for men, but for women as well. So again, if you like this, if you can give a thumbs up, if you can share this to someone else, I appreciate it. If you're interested to have some more one-on-one time, I do offer life coaching, health coaching, fitness coaching, and happy to help you wherever you are in your journey. And if you are interested for more biblical coaching, I'm available for that as well. Have a great one. Bye.